What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Today's Monday, which means Boxing Ego Monday Mail Day, aka MMD, where I pick questions from you, the viewer. I do my best to answer them. It's fight week. It's a good fight. Middleweight supremacy on the line. All but one of the belts in the middleweight division on the line, and that's Gennady Golovkin versus Danny Jacobs. Shout out to both fighters for making this fight. And I did a first look. You guys can see it on the screen. 23,000 views. Check it out. It's a tale of the tape. And let's get started with Monday Mail Day. I put a question mark, or actually a thumb up, next to the questions I'm going to answer. And let's get it in. Oh, it's a long one. ZP Goldman says, "Hey Ego, I love your channel. Pause. And keep up the great work. Thank you. You've got the best boxing channel on YouTube. My favorite video has to be when you showed Jermaine Taylor shooting the AK-47, drumming and singing country music." Two questions. Number one, a while back, Troy King said that Chocolatito can't be pound for pound great because of how his face looked at the end of the Carlos Cuadras fight. Does that statement apply to Andre Ward after his win over Kovalev? I definitely think Ward won the fight by 2 or 3, maybe 3 points, but did he increase or decrease his pound for pound greatness status after that fight? Now, for that, I mean, technically you should ask Troy King about statements he made. This is my interpretation of it. I think beyond that one fight with Carlos Cuadras is Chocolatito moved up less pounds to fight Carlos Cuadras. In those lighter divisions, a move up could be 2-3 pounds or so, right? And if you look at it, I don't really think there's anyone, I could be wrong, but I can't think of anyone who would rate Carlos Cuadras as the WBC champion at the time that Chocolatito fought him in the same echelon as what Sergey Kovalev was at light heavyweight. Plus, Ward moved from 168 to 175, which is more pounds. And again, Cuadras is a good fighter. I like Cuadras, right? I'll see him this week. But I think Kovalev has done more. He's literally went in people's backyards. Nathan Cleverly, Jean Pascal twice. Guys that are confident. Guys that were champions and stuff. And he beat them down in their own backyard, right? A legend like Bernard Hopkins. And if you look at Carlos Cuadras' resume, name a Bernard Hopkins or Pascal that he beat. You know what I'm saying? In those lighter divisions, the talent pool is a little bit different. Plus, in addition to that, I would honestly say you're moving up less pounds. But beyond that is Ward's resume in general. Like, Kovalev was a tough fight for him, no doubt about it. I was at the fight live. I covered that fight. Tough fight for him. He got knocked down. He had to work himself into the fight. Be cautious. But you look at his body of work. That's what I mean. I don't even do a pound for pound, but if I were to do a pound for pound list, it would be like there's certain people that should be in the #1 spot, and I think it's been pretty apparent who those people should have been in the last like 5 years to a decade. Like Floyd Mayweather was clearly that person. And you look at, if I were to do a pound for pound list, I would encompass their body of work, and Ward has the body of work to solidify his pound for pound status. I don't really think Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez has that. He has like Brian Valoria, who had been stopped, solid fighter. Carlos Cuadras, good fighter, right? But a lot of those guys and a lot of the best names on his resume gave him very tough fights. Arroyo, Estrada, right? Cuadras. Andre Ward, a lot of his fights that were supposed to be hard weren't really hard. He fought Carl Froch with one hand and pretty much dominated him. He stopped Chad Dawson, right? Kovalev was the only one that I could think of that was like a real challenge. And that's what happens. Sometimes you put two elite level fighters in there who are both hungry and both have a desire to win and a conflicting styles that are going to mesh well. And it was a great fight. So I think Chocolatito, he's in a different league because of a couple different reasons that I just mentioned. Number two, do you think the $50 million tournament will actually happen? Is the prize enough to get an A-side fighter like Canelo to enter? Thanks for taking the time to answer and for the incredible content. Now, I got to do some research because I heard about this Muhammad Ali tournament or whatnot, but I really don't know all the variables. I don't know what divisions. I've just been on the road and out and about, so I really don't have any information on it. I just heard the basic premise of it, and if it's good for boxing, I love it. You know what I mean? If it's gonna solidify who's the best and get rid of some of these extra ass belts, then I love it. But other than that, I haven't really heard the details behind it. I just heard the premise of what it's supposed to do. Next question, Joe Kelly. Jermall Charlo versus Triple G, who you got winning? If Triple G beats Jacobs, especially if he does it easy, I would definitely pick him to beat Jermall Charlo. But I gotta see Jermall Charlo. That's kind of a hard question without seeing how he looks at middleweight, because whatever you did in the past weight division, that's cool for personal accolades, but when you move up, those dudes don't care what you did. You know what I mean? You think the welterweights care what Danny Garcia did at 140? No, they don't. You know what I mean? Or Amir Khan or whoever moved up. You know what I mean? So none of that matters. It's good for your legacy and your resume's sake, and like I said, personal achievements and accolades, but it doesn't matter. So it's hard to answer without seeing it, because without seeing Charlo at least fight anybody. You know what I mean? His first fight could be a hard ass fight. I don't know, because I haven't seen him. He looks like he has the frame. He looks like he has the skill. He looks like his power will carry up, but we never know. Because Broner, to me, he looks like his power should carry up, and to a degree, it does. Like, I mean, he sat Sean Porter down, but he's not getting the stoppages he got at 30 and 35 at 147 pounds. It's just not happening. So it's too premature for me to say. So I'm riding with Triple G, because he's more proven and that's his division. You know what I mean? Charlo's the new, but I mean, I would like to build up to that type of fight. And with him, I did a video about it. He got elevated in the WBC rankings to number 2. So that's a good fight to build up. And when the time comes, if he's ready and I got to at least see him at middleweight, who knows what I decide. But Triple G has a tall order with the toughest fight of his career, probably, at least on paper, with Danny Jacobs this week. So we kind of have to see those things, see how he looks, because even if he wins, he could take damage. And, you know what I mean? Jacobs can punch. So we got to see how things pan out, and we definitely got to see how Charlo looks against anybody. You know what I mean? And I would definitely suggest that Charlo take a tune-up with, you know what I mean, Hassan Indam or anybody before going after a Golovkin. We've seen Kell Brook and what happened. Now Charlo's a bit bigger, but you guys get the point. Going to another man's division and immediately going to fight him without acclimating. Next question is from Camacho Family. What happened with Gary Russell Jr.? Wasn't he supposed to have a fight this week? True. It's supposed to be a double header with Charlo, the other Charlo, Jermell Charlo, and Charles Hatley. He was supposed to fight Escandon, but he got injured. So that fight got pushed back. I don't know the actual date, but it was supposed to be on the same night as Curtis Stevens versus David Lemieux, but it's not because Russell Jr.'s opponent got injured. So we're just waiting for him to get better or get the clearance to actually fight. Next question, Ivan Drago. Ego, you have a very great point in regard of HBO. I think that it is their responsibility to educate casual fans about boxing. I mean, with proper marketing and exposure, fighters like Rigondeaux would be a lot more popular. Bingo. Pushing action-only type of fights doesn't represent the sport properly, and I feel that fighter I am almost worried in the long run would be Crawford. I mean, he is the full package to be a superstar, but he does need a better exposure and marketing. What do you think, Ego? Yeah, I mean, Crawford, I've seen him. How many fights have I seen? I covered at least 2. Oh, actually, I covered 3 Crawford fights. 2 was in his backyard in Omaha, so I went to Nebraska twice, the John Molina and the Ray Beltran fight, and then I went to Vegas to work the Victor Postal fight. So I have I've been to his media days and seen him at weigh-ins, seen him in the ring, you know what I mean, real close. And the kid is gifted. He does things effortlessly. He's confident in his ability. He's confident in his defense. He's confident in his offense. So when I made the video talking about Gamboa, it's tell the truth. Tell the truth. you got to be realistic. And on my channel, Boxing Ego, what I strive to do is approach boxing from a realistic point of view. You know what I mean? I give my opinion, but I treat the fighters with the fair respect, the proper respect, and I try to be realistic. Gamboa's on a 15-month layoff. Come on, what do you expect? Lamont Peterson was on a 15-month layoff. I was at his last fight. Thought he looked good versus David Avanesian, but the first couple rounds he had to get warmed up. You know what I'm saying? And you gotta respect that. And it's not fair to compare. Like, okay, you're gonna compare a busy Lomachenko to Gamboa, who's had manager issues. His old promoter is no longer even really a boxing promoter, 50 Cent. His company went bankrupt, and he's focused on like movies and Den of Thieves and Power TV show and stuff like that. And he's obviously had dry stints, you know what I'm saying? So why would you hold him to the exact same standard as a person who HBO loves, Bob Arum, Top Rank loves, and Vasyl Lomachenko, and they're allowing him to fight frequently? You know what I mean? Of course he's going to be sharper because he's active. So HBO, they have these facts because they do the fighter meetings. They have, I'm sure, writers that come up with factoids and stuff like that. But the information, even though they have it, they still put out this narrative as if slick fighters or guys who use skill and technique are bad and all of what's wrong for boxing. And I don't agree with that. I love sluggers. You know what I mean? Ruslan Provodnikov. I like Marcos Maidana is one of my favorites, literally one of my favorites. I fuck with Chino, pause. But I don't just like that, you know what I mean? I don't just like anyone. That's like with anything, music, movies. I like variety. I don't just like one thing and just stick to that. But for whatever reason, that's the HBO narrative. Aside from Roy Jones, who's the fighter and gives you the fighter experience, and he's level-headed about it. A lot of the other dudes, especially Lampley, it's like, oh, that was boring. Even Letterman's doing it a lot more with his scorecard. Okay, Jim, all rounds to Chocolatito. Like, how did Chocolatito win every single round? That just doesn't even, when he was fighting Quadras, even if you gave him a lot of the early rounds, I don't think he won every single round. You know what I'm saying? And it's not just about who's throwing punches, it's who's doing it effectively. So HBO, if they really want to get back in the lead and beat Showtime, who's definitely been stepping on the gas, they have to come real. Boxing fans aren't stupid. You know what I'm saying? And that's just my honest message to HBO. They have great video production, soundtracks, and narration, good programming. They just got to get back to the reality, more Roy Jones type of fight breakdowns, instead of like telling us how shitty the fight is because it's not an all-action Curtis Stevens, David Lemieux. And again, you look at it, Curtis Stevens got stretched out by David Lemieux. It was a fun fight, but now people are saying Curtis Stevens should retire and he's over the hill, he's done for, and see, he talked all that shit. You know what I mean? They're saying comments like that, oh, he talked all that shit, now look at him, look at you. So I don't fault the Gamboas and people for fighting their type of fight, because at the end of the day, if you get knocked out and you get starched up, no one's going to be on your side. They're going to be pointing and laughing and making memes and showing the highlights of you getting knocked out. So you got to fight the right fight. And these guys coming off inactivity, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? Why would we expect them to, you know what I mean? That's any athlete. LeBron James is the greatest basketball player that's active right now, right? But keep him out the sport for 15 months and see how good he looks against people like James Harden or Russell Westbrook or Kevin Durant or Steph Curry, who have actively been playing all their games, you know what I mean? Give or take a few, you know what I mean? But to answer your question about Crawford, he's very skilled, so I hope he gets the proper treatment because he deserves it. He's a warrior, he's smart in there, and he's a good fighter. So HBO needs to stop that, because even in the Postal fight, they made it like almost like he was running. You know what I mean? It's Victor Postal. He's the one that has to make changes. He's the one losing, getting his ass beat. And every time Crawford did open up, it was bad news for Postal. So if you want the fight to shift, then you have to expect the loser to go for broke. And that's just what it is. Next question is from Kota Kid. Ego. Why do people keep bringing up Danny Jacobs getting knocked out by Dimitri Perot like that fight happened yesterday, even though it went down like 6 years ago. I mean, fans are fans. The fact that it's documented and recorded and people know about it. I mean, Danny Jacobs don't even have the same hairstyle. He had braids. I don't even remember the last time he had braids, so it lets you know it was a while ago. But, I mean, it's just the same reason people make fun of Broner versus Maidana. If you think about it, since that time, Broner has fought several times. John Molina, Carlos Molina, Granados, Sean Porter, but people just bring up the Maidana fight. You know what I mean? As if that's like the only thing that's ever happened in his career. So I think it's just a way to just condemn a fighter, or, you know what I mean? They love Golovkin or whatever the situation is. So they're going to bring up the worst of times for the opposing fighter. But at the end of the day, it's both fighters. I mean, you can't go off of what fighters did 6 years ago necessarily. I mean, Pacquiao is such an enigma to me, because Pacquiao, he was getting knocked out by nobodies, like Rustico Torrecampo. Who the fuck is that? You know what I'm saying? And people act like that never happened. You know what I mean? I never seen people really talking about those early body shot and headshot knockouts when it came to Pacquiao. They just talked about how he improved and got better and was running through De La Hoya and starching out Ricky Hatton and stuff like that. But certain fighters like Danny Jacobs and Adrian Broner, you just bring up their worst performance or the worst loss that they have. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, that doesn't change. I mean, Danny Jacobs is who he is now, so that's what Golovkin has to deal with. The current Jacobs, not the Dimitri Perot Jacobs. And if he beats the current Jacobs, then he beats the current Jacobs. Simple. Next question is James Kendrick. People were hyping up the possibility of Gamboa and Loma. Safe to say Gamboa will need another tune-up fight or two after his return performance Saturday. He didn't look that slick or sharp at all. I don't agree with that. I think he did look slick. I mean, anytime, if you know boxing, anytime someone can have their hands at their waist, they're probably slick, or they're gonna get touched up. And he wasn't really getting touched up like that, and he had his hands at his waist. So I definitely disagree with him not being slick. Sharp, okay, you know what I mean, that's debatable. His timing looked like it was a little bit off. Also with Lemieux performance over Stevens, I can't see Golden Boy risking Canelo in there, considering it might not rake in that much money, and David clearly has nasty power. I mean, yeah, I think it would bring in good money. I think David Lemieux, I mean, they try to put David Lemieux in there with Golovkin on pay-per-view. Canelo just did better numbers fighting Liam Smith. So, yeah, I think the numbers would be good. I don't think there'll be Canelo versus Mayweather 2 numbers or Canelo versus Golovkin numbers, but I think the Lemieux numbers will be solid. But the biggest thing is, would Golden Boy risk it, like you're saying? And they probably won't, because that means their cash cow or their other earner with a action style that's easy to sell to HBO. You know what I mean? After that knockout, you don't think HBO has a problem if you put David Lemieux in there in another, you know what I mean, a good fight, or like another name in there with David Lemieux? You don't think HBO will want to pick it up after he just knocked out Curtis Stevens like that? Of course they would. So that would hurt their business, because one of the Golden Boy fighters would be taking a loss, whether it was Canelo or Lemieux. So they would probably try to extend that gravy train for both fighters by not making that fight. I agree with the first part. Gamboa definitely should take tune-up fights before going at Loma, because Loma's the man, and he's the man to beat at 130. So definitely after a long layoff, take 2-3 tune-up fights with good guys. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't even mind a Nicholas Walters fight, to be honest, with Gamboa, because just because Lomachenko did whatever, that don't mean Gamboa going to do that, because Gamboa, he sometimes gets dropped. I mean, he got dropped in a lot of fights. So, Axeman, if he lets his hand go, he clearly has power. So, I would say take certain fights like that. You know what I mean? Not necessarily titleist, but good challenging fights that could push you, that you're going to have to be on your A game, stuff like that. And then consider Lomachenko. Next question, Bruce Taylor. Do you think Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder was able to sufficiently test his surgically repaired hand and arm in his last fight against Gerald Washington to the point where he could start pursuing fights against some of the top contenders in the heavyweight division? Yeah, I mean, he was tested. Gerald Washington was outboxing him, from my view. So yeah, he was testing it, and he was able to turn on the switch and get the offense going and stop Gerald Washington. So yeah, I mean that's all the testing that he needs. I mean, he didn't complain. I didn't see any interviews about. The only thing I seen interviews about is him running into Dominic Brazil in the lobby or whatever happened there. But I didn't hear any complaint from Wilder about his hand hurting. So I'm assuming he's good to go. Now Bruce Taylor has another question. How far do you think the stock of either Kell Brook or Errol Spence Jr. will fall with a loss in their upcoming fight? Who does the winner face? Winner should fight Keith Thurman at some point because he's the man to beat. Since he beat Danny Garcia, he beat his test. So I would like to see Brook Spence winner fight them. And to be honest, I think if Kell Brook loses to Errol Spence, that hurts him more because Errol Spence, he's the mystery. People are saying he's good, but he doesn't have the resume to back it. So it's better to lose to the champion and a guy who went up to middleweight and held his own with Golovkin in spots than it would be the reversal, which is the champion losing to a guy who has his first title shot. So that's my honest assessment. I think it hurts Kell Brook losing more than Errol Spence. If Errol Spence doesn't do it, if he doesn't, he lost to a champion, just like J-Rock lost to the Charlo brother. So it's more at stake for Kell Brook's stock. Plus the build-up, a lot of people thought Kell Brook was kind of forced into this fight, and he wanted to pursue a Pacquiao fight. He wanted to pursue an Amir Khan fight, and he was almost backed into a corner when those fights didn't materialize. Khan was talking about, yeah, I get a 70% split and you get 30. Pacquiao might fight Jeff Horn or whoever. So he didn't really have options. The only other option would be, Floyd's retired, and he's saying he's only coming out of retirement for Conor McGregor. Keith Thurman had the Danny Garcia fight booked. So, after that, he's probably going to rest a little bit. So his only other option would be for a big fight, would maybe be go up to 154, but who are you going to fight there? And then people would clearly say you ducked Spence. So in my honest opinion, there's more at stake because it's the champion. And the champion, if he does lose, he'll be losing to a guy that doesn't have a resume and it's his first title shot. Next question, also from Bruce Taylor. Is Triple G versus Canelo still a big money fight even if they both lose their upcoming bouts? Yeah, I think the interest would be still there to the point where it could sell, but clearly it would take a hit if they lose, especially if they lose bad. If either one of them gets knocked down or stopped and don't look invincible and don't look great, then of course it's going to take a huge hit in terms of the money. To me, it'd be kind of like Kell Brook versus Amir Khan. If they lose like that, where they're knocked out. At one point, I really wanted to see Kell Brook and Amir Khan. Now, I'll watch it, but it's not the biggest fight. I'd rather see Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua, two guys who have continued to keep looking good and have never been knocked out. You know what I'm saying? So it would still generate and jog up interest, but it just wouldn't have the same impact. Like I said, I think it'd be like Kell Brook after he lost to Golovkin and Amir Khan getting knocked out by Canelo, and then Kell Brook fighting Amir Khan. People will watch it. It'll still do good numbers, probably better than average or better than putting Kell Brook with Jojo Dan or whatever, but it's not going to be as ideal as if they were both looking hot and winning. Pause. Next question is from D-Boy206. Boxing Ego. Hey Ego, with Lemieux winning his fight with a nice KO, do you think he's ready for a rematch with Triple G? Or do you think Triple G just a landslide better than him and he doesn't have a chance? And if not Triple G, then who next for him and why? Thanks, bro. That's a good question. People get gassed up. Curtis Stevens, and this is not taking away or throwing shade, Curtis Stevens had the style that we knew somebody was going to sleep. Period. I posted it on my Instagram. Go check it. Check the timestamps and everything. I posted a picture of two paramedics, pushing a stretcher. And I said I ran into two of the judges for the the Lemieux-Stevens fight. I knew it was going to end in knockout. It was just a matter of who was going to get knocked out. So that was a great statement win and a vicious knockout, but people get gassed up. That doesn't mean you're going to do that to Golovkin, because Golovkin is a different puzzle. Plus, he comes with the psychological edge because he dominated, knocked down, and then stopped David Lemieux, right? And David Lemieux looked nothing like that versus Golovkin. He seemed kind of, he fought kind of shook. So knowing he lost to the man, it's a different fight, different variables. So I would still favor Triple G unless Jacobs beats him. Then, who knows? Because he'll have taken a loss and been defeated. But if Triple G beats Jacobs, then I would easily favor him to beat Lemieux again, even though Lemieux's coming off a great win. Lemieux could perhaps do better than he did the first time, but I think the outcome still favors Triple G, as long as Triple G doesn't get lured into a dogfight. And judging by how he fought in the first fight, and everyone just seen that knockout, why would he change the game plan and have a slugfest with him when you didn't do it the first fight and you just seen him blast Curtis Stevens out of this world? You know what I'm saying? So I think Triple G, he's different than Curtis Stevens. He's taller than Curtis Stevens. He worked behind the jab in the first fight. If Curtis Stevens was doing everything that Triple G did in the first fight, and then David Lemieux still did that, that'd be one thing. But Curtis Stevens wasn't fighting like Golovkin. He was fighting, trying to catch and shoot and trying to hook with the hooker. Pause. So, that fight is just a matter of time before whoever lands on the button, whoever lands the swiftest blow, the best counter, the best shot, is night-night. I don't think Golovkin would change the game plan, so I would still favor him. Next question, Brian O'Leah. Ego, since I saw the video of Troy King explaining the difference in power of punches, I've been wondering, since Lemieux KO'd Stevens and Triple G didn't do it in such a fashion, does Lemieux have a stronger caliber bullet, if that makes sense? Yeah, and see, this is the thing. People always get mad. A lot of people are like almost groupies for certain fighters and fan bases. I think Lemieux and Peter Quillin, maybe even Danny Jacobs, have more power than Gennady Golovkin. Single shot, right? Troy King did this where he was talking about Berto versus Pacquiao. He says if you're in a non-punching position to punching, he believes Berto's faster than Pacquiao. People got mad and was ripping their hair out and cussing him out and stuff like that. But you have to understand, there's different levels of speed and there's different levels of power. That doesn't have anything to do with the overall quality of the fighter. That is in no way, shape, or form suggesting that if you have more per capita power, or as you put it, a stronger caliber bullet, that you're going to beat the other person. Because the fact is, they all have power. Triple G has power. You know what I mean? So just by saying Peter Quillin hits harder, because I think Gabe Rosado did an interview and he was like, to tell you the truth, I think Quillin has more power than Golovkin. That's cool. That doesn't mean Golovkin has more of an amateur background than Peter Quillin, so they're different fighters. Golovkin delivers his power differently, the way he throws, his accuracy. So you can have certain intangibles, but that doesn't mean you're going to beat that fighter. And I think sometimes when people just hear these things, they get all bent out of shape. Like, oh, what do you mean someone hit? Golovkin's knocked out 24 people in a row. Are you kidding me? Yeah, that's because he has technique and power. You know what I mean? Where a guy can hit you harder, but here's another example. And some of you are so dumb as boxing fans, you don't even know what I'm talking about. And you're going to be like, oh, you're silly. I think Kendall Holt has probably more power than a lot of people at 140, like prime Kendall Holt. He might even have more power than Danny Garcia, Lucas Matisse, and certain guys like that at 140, or even Terrence Crawford. But that doesn't mean he's going to win every single fight because of how he fights. And, you know what I mean, there's other variables, your chin, your stamina, your endurance, your game plan, how you fight, you know what I'm saying? So you could be stronger or throw, that doesn't mean you're going to win the fight. It's deeper than that. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Lemieux hits harder single shot. I would honestly say he does hit harder than Golovkin. But Golovkin hits hard and he'll break you down. And he's offensively better than Lemieux because he has more of a technique to it, and he cuts off the ring better, and he's not as wide with his punches, and he can work behind the jab like you've seen in the Lemieux fight. He can set things up better, where Curtis Stevens and David Lemieux are just kind of gunslingers, just like rock'em sock'em robot more so than Golovkin. Next question is from Jeffrey Samarin. What's good, Ego? If Jermell Charlo beats Charles Hatley, which I think he will, it looks like he'll be facing Erickson Lubin for the WBC belt. Judging off his performance on the Thurman Garcia card, do you think Lubin has a good chance of defeating Charlo? Also, will you be out in MD covering the Loma versus Sosa fight? I don't know if I'm going to go to Baltimore or Maryland for the Loma Sosa fight. It's a solid fight, but these trips cost money, you know what I mean? And I got to kind of maximize my spending when you have a business, you know what I mean? You have to make everything count. And I don't know if it's a big enough event and to do that. Like if it was in Vegas or something, that'd be different because I'm on the West Coast. Erickson Lubin, I haven't seen enough of him. I've seen his fights though on like PBC and the Thurman Garcia fight, but I don't even know who he was fighting. I don't know that guy. Supposedly the guy had a beard and was tough, but I don't really personally have knowledge of him. But if his team feels he's ready, he's been looking good. So he definitely has a shot. He has the power. He has that nasty left hand. Jermell Charlo, some people thought Vanes Martirosyan beat him. And he also fought, I was at his fight, I covered his fight with John Jackson. I thought he was clearly losing, getting outboxed in that fight before he was able to turn things around with a knockout and stun John Jackson, who's been knocked out before. So it's a good pick'em fight, but first order of business is Charles Hatley, and we have to see how he does that because that's like kind of a grudge fight. So you know what I mean? It's not a given. Next question is from DT Taylor. Ego, what's up though? I'm 6 foot. My name is Daniel. Danny Jacobs is 6 foot. I walk around at 195. Jacob and 175. Explain to these fools the importance of body mass and weight cuts. And have you seen any fights from Eddie Murphy's nephew? And what do you think from him? Thanks, blood. Yeah, I seen Eddie Murphy's nephew, just highlights really. I haven't watched it, but he's getting knockouts and stuff. So Lynch or whatever his name is. Yeah, I've seen clips of him. I haven't really watched his whole fights, but he has a celebrity backing, so it should be good person to check for. And I don't understand your question about Danny Jacobs. Explain the importance of body mass and weight cuts. Basically, weight cut is a sensitive process. Like you have to do it the right way. If you try to, some people are lazy and then they try to do it all at once, which could be bad. Some people don't know how to cut weight right. So I think just overall weight cuts it's a pivotal part. You know what I mean? People, you have to master it because you want to be as healthy and as strong as humanly possible. Other people who try to starve themselves to stay in a division that they really don't belong in. Those things over time, especially as you get older, could be detrimental because you're doing something that's kind of unnatural. Your body's like telling you you don't belong here, and you're like forcing yourself to stay. So sometimes you're punch resistant. Actually, I think Lamont Peterson, I think he was at 140 maybe too long. Lamont Peterson is one of the people where it's like, even in the Felix Diaz fight, he looked, I mean, I know Diaz is a gold medalist and stuff, but he looked a little bit off. But I think he'll probably fill out more and be more energetic, especially leading up to the fight at 147, because he has the muscle and the mass and the frame to be there, and he's been at 140 for so long. Next question is from James Gordon. The hat you wore live in the truck with TK, are you going to sell them or any other kind of ego wear? Definitely. Yeah, I already got a bunch of them. I just got to do some photo shoots and whatnot so fans know all the color options and stuff. and see what people like. But I'm definitely going to be selling them. Information on that will be coming soon. I just have to get some stuff lined up because I got to really feel like between doing videos and covering fights and updating the website, editing articles for the website, you know what I mean? It's just a lot that I do. So I have to get the logistics and get a system of how I can effectively ship. You know what I mean? People pay their money for the hats and stuff. I got to make sure I'm on point with mailing it. And plus, beyond that, I gotta see how I can transport the hats so they don't get crushed, and like what's the proper packaging and stuff to sell them so that it gets to their destination like okay and doesn't get crushed and stuff like that. So I got a little bit of groundwork to do there, but I'm definitely gonna be selling them. Next question is from Omar Juarez. Are you expecting a Triple G big drama show? Yeah, I mean, Golovkin Jacobs could be real explosive. I'm looking forward to it. Two guys with power. I mean, we just seen it in the Curtis Stevens David Lemieux fight, but these guys have power but more technique to me, and they both know how big this fight is, so definitely looking forward to it. Askia Hussein, big fan, Boxing Ego. Please keep up the great work. My question is, how does one of the top welterweights get the belt from Manny to unify if he won't fight one of the top welterweights? Or will the WBO put him in a position where he will have to fight or vacate? I will be having another question for you next Monday, so look out for me. Most definitely. That's a good question. I want to know the answer to that. How is Keith Thurman going to unify? And Bob Arum's basically saying he's not interested in Brooks Spence, winner, or Keith Thurman. So I actually don't have an answer for that. And it seems like the WBO is always on the HBO side, and they're cool with Top Rank. So I don't know how that's going to work at all. I don't know if they're going to really press him, or, you know what I mean, they're going to mess around and say Jeff Horn is the person he has to fight as a title defense. But I mean, it's been this way for a while with Manny Pacquiao. Aside from Floyd, when's the last time he fought a young, hungry lion that was doing damage with power? Undefeated, you know what I mean? Guys like that. Don't know. Next question, Marv Beck. Ego, great job speaking the truth. Tell the truth. Will Smith voice concussion. I've been waiting a long time for Ward to be regarded pound for pound number one. How come since he beat Kovalev, he is still number two and Roman is number one? Is it because Ward's victory over the Crusher was close? And you can't even say that, because Gonzalez's victory over Quadras in the new division was close, and his eyes were shut, swollen, and he moved up less weight. So just politics. That's what I see. HBO wants Roman Chocolatito to be the number one, so they're just gonna say whoever. And they, even before the fight, you heard people say, "Oh no, no matter what, it's Chocolatito. He moved up 4 weight classes." So it is what it is. I mean, he's done good in his divisions, but again, who are the people? Like, who's the Carl Froch that he faced? The Kessler, the Arthur Abram, Sakio Bika, the Kovalev, the Edwin Rodriguez, who was undefeated and just won a tournament in Monte Carlo, right? Edison Miranda, who got cracks. You know what I'm saying? Who's those like level threats that he fought? Next question, Juzims. Who got better footwork, Triple G or Jacobs? I would say both. They use, I think Jacobs has better athletic footwork to like better legs to move about in the ring, like boxing legs. But Triple G has really good balance and cut off the ring. He's light on his feet with cutting off the ring. So they both have good footwork to me. It's just they employ it differently. Triple G kind of does it to lock horns and like pin you down and trap you and shit, and uses balance and some fancy footwork to get in close. Jacobs can box, you know what I mean, and use his legs to navigate around the ring. So I think they both have good footwork, to be honest. Next question is from Sess the MC. Ego, first of all, great work as always on your channel. Keep up the hard work. Do you think HBO will ever consider joining PBC? PBC is only growing and doing way better numbers than HBO. Do you think this is the time where pay-per-view is finally over? It's getting close to it. or at least only the big fights, Canelo, Triple G, Mayweather returning versus whoever, Mayweather, Conor, you know what I mean? But people aren't trying to see Cotto Kirkland on pay-per-view. I think the numbers would have been pretty bad, and you know what I mean? They're putting fights like Oscar Valdez versus a guy Nicholas Walters beat Miguel Mariaga on pay-per-view. That just, even if it's remotely cheap, it doesn't make sense when we're getting Garcia Thurman on free TV, Broner Granados on regular Showtime, Mikey Garcia on a co-main event to the main event, Leo Santa Cruz, Carl Frampton, which was the 2016 Fight of the Year war. It's not making sense, you know what I mean? Kell Brook, Errol Spence, Joshua Klitschko, you know what I mean? That should be on Showtime or HBO. It just doesn't make sense. Oscar Valdez and Gilberto Ramirez versus Max Bursak. Next question is from Keshel Alexander. Would you consider Lamont Peterson versus Keith Thurman a 50-50 fight? I picked Garcia too. He didn't win, but I respect him more now. I felt Keith showed he is limited with the tools in his toolbox, so he couldn't close the show. What do you think? Shout out to Ego. Love the channel here every day. Oh yeah, Brooke versus Spence. Can't wait for the Brooke impersonations. LOL. Basically. I don't know if I would say 50-50, but it's a good fight. It's a real good fight. Maybe I would say probably 60-40. Lamont Peterson, he's a good fighter. And, you know what I mean, in terms of style, delivery, and heavy hands, Lucas Matisse might have heavier hands than Keith Thurman. I mean, they both have power, clearly. But in terms of single shot, bop, and Peterson got knocked out by him, but that doesn't mean Keith Thurman will do that. Plus, Lucas is more of an aggressive boxer puncher. Keith Thurman, like you said, he kind of picks and chooses the aggression, and he kind of tapered off in the second half. So I think it's a really good fight, and Peterson became the mandatory in his last fight that I covered against David Avanesian, so I would like to see that. I think Thurman is due to face like a non-puncher after fighting Porter and Garcia, and it's just overall a good fight, so I would look forward to that. Brooke Spence, you guys know I want to see that. Next question is from Alvaro Casillas. Jamal Charlo versus Canelo. That's a tough fight. I mean, because Canelo, I would say in terms of skill, that would probably be the most skilled fight for like Charlo has faced. He's fought some pretty good competition, the Austin Childs and stuff, but in terms of skills, upper body movement with power, stuff like that, I would put Canelo up there in terms of his top. I covered the Charlo fight live on Showtime. I expected more in the Trout fight, but then he exceeded expectations versus J-Rock. So it's a toss-up. I think Charlo's, his slickness and his height could give Canelo a lot of issue, but I don't really recall, he's kind of aggressive. I don't know if I really remember him just getting on his bicycle. I mean, he's with Ronnie Shields, so Ronnie Shields, he trains famed Cuban Edeslandi Lara, so I'm not saying he doesn't have it. I just can't distinctly remember a fight where he used, like, had to get on his bicycle and evade and box off the back foot for large stretches of the fight. And Canelo does exceptionally well if you bring the fight to him in his wheelhouse. So it's really a good fight at 160 since they both moved up. Next question, in one hand. Hey, Ego, pause. Isn't that weird that people want Pacquiao in there with Crawford, Mayweather with Golovkin? Are we expecting old men to finish their great all-time great careers with weird, dangerous fights? Is there a bloodthirst amongst us as men to see our champions lose or get knocked the fuck out? Actually, I think Mayweather versus Golovkin is more outrageous to me, just because Mayweather has kept proving people wrong. De La Hoya, Diego Corrales, people said Pacquiao would beat him. He's the winner of that fight of the decade or whatever, and he came up. So he's clearly the A-side, and he's clearly proven everything he has. Now, Pacquiao has a legendary career, but he also has a lot of rematches. He's fought like 12 or 13 fights with the same four people. Barrera, Marquez, Morales, Bradley. You know what I'm saying? So even though these are good names, did he really need to fight Bradley 3 times? Did he need to fight Morales? I think twice. Did he need to fight, or Morales 3 times and Barrera twice? You know what I'm saying? In addition, I haven't heard, me personally, I haven't heard anyone on Floyd's side say that they want to make the fight. Floyd's his own boss. I've never heard Al Heyman say he wants to make the fight with Golovkin. Floyd just basically said there's no special effects. However, Pacquiao's own promoter, his boss, Bob Arum, has told the public that he would love to make Pacquiao versus Terrence Crawford. So for fans to expect Pacquiao-Crawford, that's something his team has to check. Because if they don't want the fight, then why is the promoter suggesting it on numerous occasions? Google it. You guys can find the YouTube videos, find the interviews and stuff. And his own promoter has said that. So that makes it open season. I haven't really heard Floyd's people say and push for the Golovkin fight at 160. Plus Crawford is a 140 pounder, so he would probably have to come up. Just my thoughts. Next question is from D. Lee Jr. Do you think Triple G's aggressive style and power will be superior to Daniel Jacobs' experience and ability to box and use the ring? Golovkin has great amateur experience, and he's fought top-rated, top 15 guys as a pro. It just hasn't been, in terms of my opinion, like the biggest threat to his style. But we'll see. I mean, it's fight week. Fight is coming up this week. It's a good fight, and I'm looking forward to it. Next question is from Jonathan Polenko. Ego, you think if Jacobs takes Triple G to deep waters, the fight could get interesting? Absolutely. Because one thing I noticed in the Kell Brook fight with Triple G is he seemed to be frustrated when Kell Brook was getting off shots and combinations, but also evading some of his shots, and he couldn't get him out of there. And he got this is the thing. I know Golovkin has a fan base that sometimes gets radical, but this is through the admission of his own trainer. His own trainer said on HBO 24/7, Golovkin Jacobs, that he got sloppy. He started getting hit and he got sloppy, which is what I seen as well. So I agree with Abel Sanchez on this issue. He did get sloppy in an effort to erase this welterweight. Like, oh fuck though, this welterweight ain't gonna do this to me. He got extremely aggressive, and he didn't pick his shots like he normally does, and he didn't look as methodical. He looked like out of his game plan. So yeah, the fight will definitely get interesting the longer it goes, because a lot of people think Jacobs has chin issues from the Dimitri Perot fight, and in addition, Golovkin has this knockout streak, so he might grow frustrated if this guy who's supposed to be out of there, who's already been stopped, is still hanging around 6-7. But Jacobs has to be smart to make it to that point. So, should be a good fight. Next question, Keith Mathis, one fresh to death. Ego, my brother from another mother. Do you think about a fight between Luis Collazo and Danny Garcia for a comeback fight? I love it. Great fight. Collazo, he's a veteran. He plays spoiler against Victor Ortiz, Sammy Vasquez, and he's a veteran. Danny Garcia coming off his first pro loss. Make it happen. It's an East Coast fight. I think it would do well at the Barclays. Collazo is from Brooklyn. Garcia is from Philly, which is probably an hour away. Make it happen. I think that's a rightful name. Work some things out in your Keith Thurman loss. Whatever he feels, him and his team feels they could have did different, and keep it pushing. And then see if Collazo can play spoiler. Because if he beats Sammy Vasquez and then he beats Danny Garcia, I mean, he's a beast, because he nearly stopped Keith Thurman, or at least knocked him down. A lot of people thought he beat Berto and Ricky Hatton. I mean, Collazo would be like the upset specialist at that point. Next question, the main man. Who has the best footwork in the game right now? Floyd Mayweather excluded since he's retired, kind of unretired for Conor McGregor. I would say Lomachenko probably does. Light on his feet. He knows where he's at all times in the ring, and he does those weird angles. He's very athletic, very aerobic, and I like his footwork. It's educated. He's doing it with a purpose. He's not like bouncing all over the damn place without a reason. You know what I'm saying? There's like a reason why he's doing the things that he's doing. So I would say Lomachenko. Next question is Hannibal Bastion. Who should be more cautious of his opponent's power, Golovkin or Jacobs? Or basically, who do you think will come out as aggressor and who will come out and box? I mean, they both have hurt you power. Like, you can't sleep on anybody's power. So I really don't know. I don't know that because Triple G switched things up. People thought he would go to war with Danny Jacobs. They were even saying it was Hagler Hearns, and it wasn't that because he came out behind an educated jab, which we seen Lemieux knock out Curtis Stevens brutally, worse than he's ever been knocked out, even by Golovkin, with one punch. So he obviously did that with a purpose. That made sense to stay away from this guy's power early and soften him up and break him down. Jacobs might, just knowing that Golovkin's this feared guy, he might choose to try to box. I think Jacobs, if he does box, he still has to take stands in the fight to let Golovkin know he's not no punk and assert his power like, hey, you're not the only guy with this. So I can't call it. I don't know who's going to try to box. Golovkin might try to come out against the taller guy. He has 350 Amis for a reason. He might try to come out against the taller guy and do that David Lemieux stiff jab. But then Jacobs, all the pressure of him getting knocked out by Dimitri Perot, he might try to box and see what Golovkin has. And I just think he has to. Golovkin does better with that style. If you try to box him and you make him come to you, that's what he likes because he cuts off the ring well. So I think if he does do that early, he has to not let Golovkin get in a rhythm, and he has to assert himself, take some stands, plant your feet, and try to back Golovkin up. Final question is the amazing Mother Porker. Yo, Ego, have you heard of the World Boxing Super Series? Grand prize is $50 million for the winner. What are your thoughts? Keep up the good work, Ego. Yeah, again, as I said, I've heard about it, but I don't know all the details. I'm all in support of anything that's great for boxing, Super 6 style tournaments, the World Boxing Super Series. They're trying to bring the spotlight back to boxing. They're putting it on prime time, and these are all great things. Putting boxing, like Garcia Thurman did $5.1 million on CBS. These are all great things. So I'm in full support of it. I just got to get some more details. Let me know how you guys think I did this particular week. Monday, mail day. I will be back. Fight week, Golovkin, Jacobs. Drop it in the comment section. Make sure you share the video, like the video as always. Hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off.